Welcome to our final installment of ABB Behind the Scenes. Um, Tonight, we will be talking about the future of Brain Club, featuring reflections from our community moderators and inviting your reflections. Before we begin, closed captions are enabled. You just have to toggle them on if you'd like to use them. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the live transcript closed captioning icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. You can also do the same and choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. Brain Club. What is Brain Club? Brain Club, of course, our weekly community education program for purposes of demonstrating ABB's approach to neuro-inclusive culture, for purposes of shifting broader awareness of issues of concern and importance to the neurodivergent community, so as to promote new ways of thinking and being in the world. And so then we go forth into the rest of our lives and carry it forward. And that is how culture change happens. While we hope that this is a place where you feel safe and supported right from your very first time, Brain Club is not a support group. It's not for medical or mental health advice. It's not the right place to make personal requests or just personalized needs. It's also not a neurodivergent affinity space. Everyone is welcome to come and to learn and observe what a neuroinclusive space looks like and think about how what you're learning connects to your life. There is no one right way to participate at Brain Club. You can have your video on or off. Even when it's on, we do not expect anything of you. Feel free to walk or move or fidget or stim or eat or take breaks or anything else that needs doing. We will have time for discussion after we watch our pre-recorded panel, and during those discussions, you're welcome to use mouth words, chat. You don't need to do those things. Observation is a valid form of participation. In addition to affirming all aspects of identity, some of the other ways that we prioritize the group's needs to create a safe place for everyone to be in space together. And Lizzie's going to drop a link in the chat to our frequently asked questions that cover a lot of the logistics that might come up. Speaking of the chat, chat is open. Feel free to use it if you would like. You can also completely feel free to ignore the chat. The main actions will be up on the screen. If it's your first time at Brain Club, it's okay to take a little while to figure out the lay of the land. Keep coming back. As I said, some of the logistics that sometimes people wonder about are in the FAQ. All right, some announcements before we get going into our panel. There is no Brain Club in September. Why is that? Well, we are doing just as we did last year. It's really important to us that we, in all of our programs, Brain Club included, but in all of our programs, it's really important to us that we are having the intended impact, like that Brain Club and other programs are actually being helpful to people and helpful in the ways in which we would expect and hope.
Sorry, Mel.
It's okay. So what we do every year is we take a few weeks to gather feedback. And Brain Club's turn to gather feedback is in September. And so we invite you to share your feedback on your Brain Club experiences. There are 4 ways that you can provide feedback. Lizzie's going to put a link in the chat to a survey where you can answer some questions about Brain Club. You can also contact Lizzie either by email, email, but you can just like send your thoughts in an email. You can also send an audio memo or a video message, whatever you would like to connect with Lizzie. Thank you in advance for considering sharing your feedback. And what we learn from your feedback will inform Brain Club for the rest of the year and beyond. So thank you for co-creating this Brain Club experience. When we come back in October, on October 7th, we are very excited to announce that in October and on October 21st in particular, it's our 175th Brain Club. We look forward to celebrating with you. We actually have some really awesome special guests coming to do a panel with me on autistic burnout and chronic illness. We'll be joined by Patrick Gassal and Dr. Megan Anna Neff. So very excited for that special 175th Brain Club. And Lizzie's going to put a link in the chat to sign up for October Brain Club. It'll also get sent out to anybody who's registered for August Brain Club. So we'll remind you that there's no Brain Club in September. We will remind you of opportunities to give feedback, and we'll remind you about this link to register for October. All right. As many of you know, a few weeks ago. Uh-oh. There we go. A few weeks ago, we launched a new resource of our healthcare focused brain clubs. Were launched as a digital resource library that was not only just the recordings and transcripts, but also text summaries and infographics. And we're really excited that in mid-September, the part 2 of the project gets announced. So while you are apart from live Brain Club in September, you'll have access to the full digital resource library, which has past Brain Clubs from 2022 through present, searchable by topic. So you can toggle on, I want the employment ones, or the relationship ones, or the nervous system regulation ones, or all the book chats. Like, so you can, it's instead of like searching by date, you can search by topic. So we're really excited to share this with you. And if you'd like to be notified when it launches, we invite you to sign up for our newsletter at allbrainsbelong.org/newsletter. All right, now we're ready for our main event. So if you've joined us the last couple of weeks, you know that in August has been community moderator-led Brain Club. When we look back over the past year, after we gathered feedback in September, we revamped the program based on community feedback, and so we have a new format. We have a community moderator panel. We experimented with different formats and different topics and different ways of doing panels. We experimented with how we did the chat for a while, and certainly that we learned as our team. We've learned a lot through the year, and we look forward to hearing what the impact of that has been for you. So tonight we are going to hear reflections from our moderator panel about what they have learned in the past year of Brain Club. Thank you again to our 2025 community moderators, Liz Carney, Amy Noyes, Sarah Knudsen, and Rai Repoloki. Without further ado, here is our panel. Okay, team. So maybe can we start off by recapping what this Brain Club 2.0 grand experiment has been?
I think we clarified a lot of intentions. We recommitted to clarifying what the space is, which is a classroom space. And we clarified, how we wanted to care for people in the space in a more collective way, and emphasizing protecting the collective, which I think was really helpful. And we really worked hard, I think, to make everyone feel included, to the extent that we could. And I think we did a lot of that and having more ABB people sharing their personal stories. I also did a lot of that care in the chat space.
Yeah, and I think that that clarity. So it was like, all right, well, Brain Club has gotten really big, and we have to really zoom out and say, what's the point? What are we trying to achieve? And again, as you said, convening this group as to be thinking about that, to be intentional about what does a co-created public-facing community education program look like? I've never been to one of those. I don't know. And so that was what this was about. And based on the feedback that we got from the community, these are the steps that we took. So I guess my wondering is, how do you think it went?
I think as um, as Liz was saying, we sort of kept it local, right? And in that, we actually got to know each other a little bit better too, and and in a way that was also familiar to a lot of our people witnessing the panel and people coming to Brain Club. That there was um, it wasn't a lecturer in the sky model of interaction and familiarity. It was a true inside community familiarity, and so the people coming in were joined in with that together with us in those moments, and that I think was really different. And there is no better model, uh, but I think that was a shift this year that we worked on, and that seemed successful on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
I also think that I really appreciated the emphasis on for new people coming in, that there's this like, we want you here, you're really welcome, and this space might be a space that's not this a similar space, and it's like what normative culture would look like. And so we're asking you to really come and observe what the culture is we're trying to create, and that it's okay just to observe and to watch for a few times, question or something. Like, we want you here, and we're trying to preserve this culture that we're trying to create for safety, for learning. um,
Yeah. Because like I think not only did we sort of delineate what are the components of neuro-inclusive culture, we also tried to model, how do we reflect in real time? Like, we don't know, we're making this up, right? So it's like this like it's like the iterative nature of Brain Club. Like, we made tweaks every week for the past 9 months. We made tweaks. Every single Brain Club was a little bit different, structured upon the tenets of what Brain Club is supposed to be, as Liz described, as a classroom style community education program about, rather than be about neurodiversity. There's lots of resources about that, but have it be about neuro-inclusive culture, which is hard to achieve. So we're going to start, like, in a collective way, actually like operationalize neuro-inclusive culture. It's like easy to say, oh yeah, we're neuro-inclusive. Like, what does it even mean? And what does that look like amongst a group of people, both who know each other, and given that it's public facing, anybody coming in has some framework to enter into and try on, and they may not like it, and it is how we've designed things here.
I think I think maybe an unintentional marker of our success and growth too is the fact that we've all kind of said, looking back at older video is a little bit cringy, and that's, and it's like, oh, I know so much more now. I've shifted my perspective, and like that's like, it's, while it's hard to tolerate that, it's an opportunity to call out the growth, and to say, like, we are always learning here, like every single one of us, the person on day one, the person on year 10.
Absolutely. And I think that, like, sometimes when we decide to revisit a topic that we have covered in the past, we do that because, one, there are people who haven't covered that topic before. And so we want to bring the content in. And yet, the way we covered that 6 months ago, a year ago, we are different. We are all different. We're all growing and learning every day. And so, like, it's that dynamic tension of, like, I want to, celebrate the growth, and also I cringe from seeing like what the pre-growth looked like. And I think that's just going to be how it goes.
And I think naming that's really important because, cancel culture and the you make a mistake and you're out, and there's this, but we're all making mistakes all the time, and we all have different access needs. And so we all are navigating how to, be in balance with each other and as a community, and as individuals. And so I think that naming that and tolerating that and continuing to grow with that is really important.
Yeah, I think recognizing how many of us, maybe particularly of us who masked most of our experience, how many times we were making mistakes or how much energy we were putting in to not make mistakes. I think we were really acknowledging that we're not, we want to have people understand the impact that could be happening that maybe people aren't aware of. And so we're not saying you're wrong. And I really saw that shift. I saw people in the chat come in and go, I get it. Like saying, I get it now. Oh, I get how I'm sharing my personal experience. I'm sharing traumatic experiences that I've had because I feel so safe here. I feel comfortable here. And that's what people seem to do. It's like the panelists are sharing their lived experience. We as viewers get to listen to their experience and then reflect upon our experience, not necessarily sharing that with the group. That it's the panelists' turn to share what their lived experience is. And so I really felt like I saw that it happening in the chat, people getting that.
And first there was like resistance to it because one, it's new. Two, it's like, well, what do you mean I can't say what's on my mind? This is my safe space, right? But like, we really, in distinguishing between educational space and a support group, this is how that is operationalized. So that anyone can come into the space without, established relational safety and be in the space. It's about it's about just it's that whole collective over individual emphasis of Brain Club.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things this panel is, looking at is kind of saying, hey, we're going to show you our process. We're going to do these videos and show as a panel and look at the intentionality of All Brains Belong and how much care goes into it for the collective and for the panelists that are sharing their lived experience. And I think that what people might not know is how just being a patient and a community member, All Brains Belong, is this core value of really being inclusive and a core value of care. And the systems, like the logic model, like there is a structure and a focus and an ability to reevaluate, to be honest with ourselves of the mistakes that that maybe have been made, or looking at what the community needs. But there's really a system of how that is being changed and looked at. Like you're getting the understanding from the community.
Totally. We're measuring impact. So it's like it'd be easy to like pat yourself on the back and be like, "Oh, we did a thing. Good job, team." But like, I don't know. I have no idea what the impact is because we didn't ask, right? So like usually for the past couple of years, like, we have a culture of impact assessment here, which is why we cancel, like, I don't want to say cancel because of cancel culture. Like, we end programs all the time here. We start things as 6-month pilots. We measure the impact. If the impact is not there, we don't invest further resources in the program. So Brain Club is our longest standing program. Because we keep measuring impact and it's been there, and so we will continue to measure impact so that like the iterative adjustments can be made to Brain Club. Now that Brain Club is serving I think a different audience, or a broader audience, because we have like the layers of the onion. We have like we have our patient community, our community program regulars, we have our our community partners who participate in Brain Club in different ways. We have the broader public who is like transiently checking it out and coming to learn. We have neurodivergent folks. We have families of neurodivergent folks or friends of neurodivergent folks. We have just like the broader community of professionals and non-professionals just coming to learn. And sometimes people end up learning a lot about themselves. From your point of view, is there anything that you think we could have done better?
I think the process we went through as we invented Brain Club 2.0, um, it wasn't without its uh, need for readjustment when we stopped the chat, and then people were upset by that. Um, and we're also working hard to take care of themselves in that in order to make that okay. And we still had to sort of hold a line. But in that moment, we made rules, sort of, which were all very important because we needed to curate the space in a way that could be safer for everybody in the space. And as we sort of intentionally fumbled our way through that with ups and downs, I'm sure there might have been, more graceful ways to do that. And also, um, we were trying to be as transparent as we could with what what our intentions were to create the safer spaces that we had been looking for. Um, and
Yeah.
that in doing that, we were encouraging people, rather than sharing more in the chat about their own personal stories or the things that were, trauma moments in their own life, that asking people very intentionally to still hold that while finding familiarity and belonging in the space itself, um, is a really tricky balance. And we were very clearly asking people to hold and practice that balancing act, which is incredibly difficult. And in a world that drama's everywhere, about a billion different subjects. So um, I think nuance wise, there's always more nuance one could have. There's always more practice one could make. There's always, more grace we could invent and have and try. But I think that it was a worthy process, and really hard. We all struggled with how to maintain our own access needs, maintain the access needs of the external group, maintain the access needs of the panelists, and have a cohesive situation where nobody got hurt accidentally or on purpose.
Yes. Because I think like the important thing that I would name to like precede that reflection is that we got feedback from the panelists that they felt disrespected and invalidated when there was side chat going. We're like, we can't tolerate that. The panelists are getting hurt. And so our initial reaction was like, all right, we're going to cut off the chat. And the focus is up here. Or we're going to open up the chat for portions, but not while the panelists are speaking. And I do think that that sort of, and even though we adjusted, in iterations throughout the year, there was this like staged impact. Like stage one was helping people understand that what you communicate in the chat is the equivalent of communicating with mouth words. Like, oh wow, I never thought about it that way. So like what I would say in the chat, is that something I'd say out loud while someone else is talking? Nope, I would not do that. And so, we did need this structure to kind of walk people to feel that in their bodies of like, oh, well, someone else is talking, we don't talk. And sometimes there's like a slipping backwards of just notice, like, I'll cut this out, but or I'll find some other way to splice out part of it. But like last week there was too much chat. It was me who was presenting. I didn't care because I wasn't presenting about myself. I was just reading quotes from someone else's book. But like it was disrespectful to the author. How much side chat there was. But like I don't have skills to slow it down. My only skill is to ignore a comment. And so I ignore, like sometimes I'll emoticon something instead of replying. Sometimes I won't reply at all. But then someone else is replying, and so so anyway, I think that's still an opportunity for improvement. Is
Yeah.
is like how do we give each other feedback that actually we are deviating from the purpose of Brain Club here in real time?
Like in retrospect, if we had known maybe people were feeling like they were in trouble, to really work through that. The fact that people were feeling like they were in trouble felt like that educational trauma part was like, really hard to take, of like, please trust us to say that you're not in trouble. that this is a general feedback that we're getting from the panelists, and we really need to address it.
Right. And like sort of acknowledging the reality of like not just, it's educational trauma, it's rejection sensitive dysphoria. Like these
Yeah.
are variables that are out there. And like the framework that we build has to account for all of that.
Right.
But I think like the hopefully the transparency of helping people understand how much intentionality goes into this. That's why most places are not like most spaces are not like Brain Club, because it's really hard to do. And it'd be so much easier if we knew everyone and we had relational safety with everyone, but like that's not what Brain Club is. We have that in other programs. This is like we want as many people as possible to have access to learning about neuroinclusive culture, because we think that that's how systems change happens, and it's really hard.
Whenever I was coming into the space, I was always trying to kind of think of the full range of people that might be represented, whether it was somebody coming in on day 1 or on day 500. And that's a pretty big chasm in terms of like how to care for all of those people in between. And I think it's doable, but it takes a lot of the intention that we're cultivating here, and it takes a lot of review and iterating, like all the things that we're doing here.
Totally. Yeah. But like for me, I think it's still a challenge to like sort of to know how to talk about healthcare. We're trying to model what we're doing here, um, with the idea of what both professionals can learn about what they can try to replicate, and for people who are not satisfied with their medical care about like what they can ask for in their traditional healthcare spaces. But like I think that it's a challenge because not everyone lives in Vermont and can come to All Brains Belong. So like healthcare, I feel it's so interesting. Like as a doctor who runs a healthcare organization, I am the most stressed when we have healthcare brain clubs. I'm stressed out by healthcare brain clubs because I'm just like holding that dynamic tension of like knowing that we're talking about something that works really well. That is really hard for people outside the community.
um, I had to fill out paperwork whether I'm going to a physical therapist or I'm going to go to this other specialist, or I'm like, that is still a reality for me. So although I'm a patient at All Brains Belong, I can, get my access needs met. But what is really important that I don't know that you don't have the experience of being the patient is what I am doing is I am learning how to in those other spaces say what my access like to find out if it's safe. So there's a video of me from the very beginning. I'm teary. We've all seen it a million times, and I'm saying it wasn't safe for me. It's like, and so that has changed, and it's because I can come back and say, hey, I went and got a mammogram, and they were really inappropriate with the way they talked about me, and I got to call because I had the support. I knew I could call the office and say that was inappropriate instead of never being able to go back for another mammogram. I now can because I and that person was reprimanded and I was listened to. And so I'm filling out paperwork recently and I'm like, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to go to this physician and I'm going to say, I want to be really honest with you. And here's why it's important for me to be honest with you, because if I lie to you, which I will if I don't feel safe, or I'll get mute, like I need extra processing time. I'm, autistic and ADHD, and so I think that's what is important to understand is that we are learning that being your patients, but we're also learning that at Brain Club.
Yeah.
And we can continue to have those conversations of like, how do people, because we're still having to go to dentists and eye doctors and, physical therapists, and we don't know if it's safe when we go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where that comes across is the modeling, that you're doing, the language that you're doing, the how you structure your language, how you talk about access needs, like those are, what I see being echoed in the chat time and time again is it's not a jealousy, it's an empowerment.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah.
people feel empowered to go forward in their own states. They're not going, they're not looking at realtor.com to move to Vermont. Like they're looking to take this into their own spaces.
Yeah.
And you're teaching us how to do that.
Yeah.
You're saying you have a right to exist. Here's what from a a physician's perspective, here's what your rights should be, and if they're not, you can ask for them, or you can go to somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's 20 examples of things that work well for different people
Right.
that you might not have thought
Yeah.
about
Right.
before,
As
you know,
told by those people.
as told by those people.
Yeah.
And also just normalizing words like motor plan, PDA, you know, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, ADHD, autism, like making it a natural part of conversation to say, these are things that I think better when, these are things when I do better when, I need this in order to, um, and my motor planning, if you can help me with this part of my motor planning, I can take it from there.
Yes.
That normalizing and just like sort of making that a daily practice of like, oh, I function this way, and that's a good thing. That helps me in the world. That that I'll just I think the healthcare ones, the ones that where we really specifically talk about healthcare, I think the examples that are given so often, and maybe even more in the future too, can be these menus that you have always given. All Brains Belong has always given these menus, these ideas, and um, and then feedback on the ideas. And sometimes this idea is perfect, and sometimes this idea has to be tweaked, and sometimes this idea is the exact opposite. But because we talked about the idea, now I know that it's the opposite, and now I know what to do from there.
Ah, yes.
That all of those things just being out there and right for people.
Right.
Um,
And that there's no one right way to do anything.
yeah, exactly. All of that makes it possible, like what Amy was saying, is to like bring it out into the world, into our other practitioners, whether we're in Vermont or outside of Vermont, and gives the words to you know, maybe advocate for ourselves with the PCP that is out of state and really has no experience at all whatsoever with any of these things, or
Right.
education.
Or even our mother-in-law or our neighbor.
Yeah. And you taught, so you're teaching us about our brain. We get to carry that into the world. So I can say when I'm in a new environment, I need extra processing time. I may not be able to answer your question as quickly as you need me to.
Yep.
I literally wrote that this morning on an intake paper.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much.
That's awesome.
And I think that like you see things like that like play out in healthcare, but in like so many other realms of life,
Yeah.
whether that be different workplaces or interacting with your kids' school or like talking to, you know, someone you have some other type of relationship with. Like this is the stuff of everyday life. Like we all have brains that
Yeah.
go through the world. But I
Right.
do think like, and this is really interesting, on reflection on what has been hard or what has been stressful to me as facilitator, I think really what this is that it's like going back, you know, in the iterations throughout the year of Brain Club, we dropped off certain introductory concepts that like we, you know, we iterate the beginning, the community agreement and how we're going to be in space together. And things that dropped off through the year actually were pretty intentionally put there. We just saw that the intro was 20 minutes long, so we started cutting it, right? But initially we talked about sort of like, you know, understanding that when part of being a neuro-inclusive space is, and I remember Rye in our video at the beginning of Brain Club 2.0, and you talked about like, you know, the trauma leaking out of your eyeballs, and you know you got to mop up the tears. um that is required for being in neuro-inclusive community, and we stopped telling people that at the beginning of the Brain Club introductions. And so when we bring up loaded topics like healthcare, like school, like work, we have people who get really dysregulated. They may have, it's not like, like content warning, we're going to talk about work. It was in the title of the it was in the title of the week's episode. But still, you don't if you're not aware of the things that are activating to you, you don't know, you don't anticipate.
You know, a lot of times in the last years, we've been talking about trauma that happened to you in the past, and that's the trauma leaking out our eyeballs, educational trauma, work trauma, trauma. We've also been talking about the trauma that still exists in healthcare, in education, in work, and racism and sexism and heterosexism and transphobia and all the things, right? Um, sorry. Um, and what is now true and it has been true, but we've been able to sort of couch it in past and and taking care of ourselves and rest, you know, and not being burned out and finding ways through burnout and all of those things. But there's a piece of our world now that, and you can edit this out if you need to, but there's a piece of our world now that we are all traumatized all the time. And so it's even more important to be able to take care of ourselves in our own like flipping the lid moments, to be able to like find a communication with our limbic system, not to boss them around and tell them to shut down and shut up, but to like find a communication with our limbic system that's I'm going to take 5 minutes of this and then I'm going to take a break and then I'm going to do 5 minutes, then I'm going to take a break. There, whatever methods work, but I think as we look at trauma leaking out our eyeballs and out our ears and mopping up our own tears and mopping up other people's tears and creating a place where we can grieve together because the world needs that right now. That we are still responsible, but also um, honest about the fact that these traumas aren't going away, um, and that we're still working on them together. We can be compassionate together with ourselves, with each other, that we're still building this community where we're still going to make mistakes. We're still going to be growing. We're still going to be practicing. We're all here. We're all hurting. We're all growing. We're all healing. We're all trying. And that's what health is.
Wow. Thank you so much to Liz and Amy and Rye and Sarah. Though Sarah is not in the video, Sarah played an integral part throughout the year as well. So thank you to all of you for serving as our community moderators. And I absolutely agree. What a powerful message to end on. And so, with that, I'd love to open this up for any reflections from anyone, either in the chat or out loud, about either something you heard or what Brain Club has been like for you this year. Colette says, listening to others in the chat, I realize that I've come a long way in asserting and advocating for myself in healthcare appointments. Oh, that's awesome. So proud of you, and thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else? This is not your last opportunity by any means to share feedback. I'm going to show that slide one more time about ways to share feedback on Brain Club that we're going to be reviewing over the next couple of weeks. So between now and September 15th, you can provide feedback through the Google Form survey. Lizzie, if you wouldn't mind reposting that, that would be helpful. And you can also reach out to Lizzie by email, just sharing your reflections just in the text of an email or audio or video. We would love to hear from you. Oh, that's great. That's helpful, Kay. Yeah, so Kay's referencing the trials about chat enabled or chat turned off, and just for folks who are new to Brain Club and weren't part of kind of what led to the few weeks where the chat was disabled, that came from feedback from panelists who were reflecting that the chat kind of had a mind of its own, and that several people sharing that they felt like the chat wasn't about what they were sharing as they shared their vulnerable stories. And so that's why we went through that, iterative period of saying, all right, well, kind of much like if you go and you watch a performance, or you listen to someone speaking on a stage, that we wouldn't have a separate conversation. And so I do think that just bringing some awareness to just bring some awareness, I think, was able to slow the chat down and make it so that the chat could be available, which for many people is an access need, and with respect to the panelists. Joe.
Can you hear me okay? Because my computer's laggy tonight.
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Yeah, all I was going to say, to piggyback on what I was saying earlier in the chat, is just that you asked the question about Brain Club, and I'm not always able to be here every week, but having worked my whole life with adults with, intellectual developmental disabilities, neurodivergent brains, autism, it's even after I got my diagnosis of ADHD like 10 years ago, and long COVID, all the brain fog, it wasn't until Brain Club that really got to see the mirror turned towards me, that I'm just as deserving as anybody else. So that's been very powerful for me. So the different themes, whether it's been healthcare or workplace or otherwise, has been very, very empowering for me. And I've been able to take some of that into my workplace and into different places in my life, and embrace more of my own neurodivergence instead of trying to keep fitting that square peg in the round hole. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing.
So it is valuable. Yeah, very valuable.
Well, I that is the point of Brain Club. That's the point, so that we can all come together, and we may not even realize if something applies to our own lives until someone else says it, or someone else shares a story, and we connect the dots, and then we now have this, maybe a new insight, maybe a new narrative, maybe a new idea about how we can try something out for our own selves and our own lives, just like Joe said. And so thank you all of you for being part of our community and for making that experience possible for one another. And so with that, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Again, if you are not yet on our newsletter, when we launch the digital resource library with all the Brain Clubs from the past almost 4 years, in a couple of weeks, that'll be the first place where it gets announced. We'll also post on social media when it's up and running. And we look forward to seeing you back in October. And in the meantime, if anyone does have other thoughts and feedback about the Brain Club program, we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.